The Trump administration has destabilized Venezuela, is demanding Greenland, and has denounced NATO. With more on Press Perspective today. Hope your work week is off to a good start. It's Monday, January 12th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sunhee. The Trump administration's foreign policy is causing concern in the international arena amid its assertive campaign in the name of security. For more on this reality, I have Chloe Borgnon with French broadcaster France 24 here in the studio. Chloe, hope you had a great weekend.
It was very nice. I hope yours was good too.
Thank you so much. I also have Professor Ban Kil Joo at the Korea National Diplomatic Academy with us. Professor Ban, as always, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Hello, good to be with you.
Lovely. We shall start here in the studio. Chloe, let's begin with US President Donald Trump's renewed territorial claim over Greenland. So what has he been saying?
So as of last Friday, actually, he said that this time he was speaking about national security, saying that the United States should have Greenland. It was interesting to see that he was at a meeting with oil and gas executive at the White House that he made this claim. He said something like, I'm going to quote him, "We're going to be doing something with Greenland, either the nice way or the more difficult way." And the second part of the sentence has been raising concern lately because the truth is, the Trump administration has never ruled out any armed operation to get Greenland. They have not said that they would send the army, but when asked the question, they have never ruled it out yet. So that's what is getting probably the European especially the most concerned about. Is also being saying that if it was not for the United States, then Russia or China will be the one coming in and to seize Greenland. And Donald Trump said that he doesn't want them as a neighbor. Even so, I mean, through the Bering Strait on the other side, they are already neighbored with Russia. But it's just one of the arguments he's been putting on the table. I mean, he's been speaking about getting Greenland since 2019, so the first mandate, where he kind of had the idea publicly, but there he had no backup. People were not okay with that. But through the time, he's been speaking that it was either a strategic location needed for the US or also the fact that there is a mineral wealth in the Greenland that the United States might need for their industry. And that's not this time that he chose to speak about it, but it's been recurring in the last weeks or so when he's been speaking about Greenland.
So what has Greenland and Denmark been saying in response to his demands for that particular piece of land?
Well, once again, there have been like really strong opposition from both. So Greenland is one of the countries that is in the Danish kingdom. So they both have their word to say about what the United States is talking about. If we take Denmark, the Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, she said that it made absolutely no sense and that the United States had no right to try and annex Greenland. Denmark has also been reminding Donald Trump that actually the two countries are allies, especially in a very strategic part of the world, that is the Arctic. And they're saying that, they're reminding him that the two countries are working together for peace in Arctic region and that it should not be forgotten so quickly by the United States. Greenland Prime Minister himself said that the Greenland is not for sale, and it's also something that's been quite reminded in all the media is people from Greenland would like independence from Denmark, but they don't want to get under the power of the United States. Recently, a poll has just said that 85% of Greenlanders do not want to be a part of the United States.
Right, 85% do not want to be a part of the United States. That being said, Professor Ban, for the sake of perspective, and before we delve any deeper, do tell us briefly why Greenland is a part of Denmark.
Well, thousands of years ago, Inuit peoples who migrated from North America settled in Greenland. In the meantime, as time went by, European powers have begun their interventions in Greenland. Denmark's claim over Greenland in the modern era traces back to the 18th century when Denmark remained an influential power in Europe. In particular, Denmark began its claim over Greenland in 1721 when Danish arrived there for missionary and trade. Denmark has controlled and governed Greenland as a colony over the last 2 centuries since then. Meanwhile, Denmark's colonial control over Greenland ended in 1953 when Denmark revised its constitution thanks to the efforts of decolonization by the United Nations. So Greenland became one of the Danish counties, not a colony of the Kingdom of Denmark. Although Greenland got out of a colony, Denmark maintained hostile policies against the Inuit peoples, such as cultural integration, which drew criticism not only locally, but also globally. The accumulated complaints led to the 1979 referendum for autonomy, which it turned out to establish home rule and Greenlandic parliament. Greenland automatic power has been stepped up through the 2009 Self-Government Act. So as of right now, Greenland belongs to Danish territory under Greenlanders' strong autonomy. In more detail, Greenlanders maintain their autonomy in areas like the justice system and policing, as well as education, culture, language, and national resources. And Denmark is in charge of diplomacy and defense.
Right now, despite that reality, Professor Ban, as Chloe mentioned earlier, the Trump administration claims that the US needs Greenland for national security. What does that mean?
Well, as first glance, Trump is concerned about the growing presence of Russia and China in Greenland and the Arctic Ocean. But the story does not end here. So we need to take a closer look at how national security is defined under the second Trump administration. The scope of national security is being expanded from hard security like military defense to national resource security, energy security, border security, anti-drug operations, and territorial expansion under the second Trump administration. In this vein, we need to figure out the logic or calculations behind Trump's remark on the need to acquire Greenland from the standpoint of national security. I would say that there are three major calculations. First, individual, second, business, and third, grand strategy. First of all, when it comes to Trump's individual characteristics, he is eager to be recognized as the most powerful president in American history. To that end, he wants to achieve differentiated outcomes from his predecessors. To Trump, Greenland remains unaddressed in the sense that earlier efforts like Truman's suggestion to buy Greenland with gold ended in failure. Second, Trump's business mentality can be explained by the motivation to take control of Greenland. He wants to maximize profit as a national level of businessman, even though his actions might violate international laws. Operation Absolute Reserve targeting Venezuela showed how Trump can take advantage of the concept of peace through strength for making a profit. Likewise, a massive amount of natural resources and the size of Greenland, similar to the United States territory, serve as a major driver for Trump to seize Greenland and make unprecedented profits. Third, most importantly, the Trump administration comes up with a mixed strategy based on the concept of onshore control and offshore balancing. The Trump administration has defined the Western Hemisphere as the most important domain through the 2025 National Security Strategy. In this vein, the onshore strategy is to seize the sphere of influence over the Western Hemisphere, including Latin America, Canada, and even Greenland. Simultaneously, the Trump administration is interested in offshore balancing in an aim to check the rise of China and Russia, which means the United States stays away from deeply engaging in remote areas like the Western Pacific, and instead it serves as an offshore balancer while asking its regional allies like Japan to be more responsible regarding their burden sharing. With this in mind, the Donald Doctrine, which some pundits define as Trump's strategy, is not an exact term. I will say that Donald redesign is a more relevant terminology in the sense that the Trump administration attempts to revise the formula of international politics, and in doing so, it facilitates uncertainty in the transitional era.
Right, and speaking about uncertainty, there are quite a number of pundits, Chloe, who claim that Mr. Trump's latest threat against Greenland poses a potentially unprecedented challenge for NATO. Do tell us a bit more about these particular thoughts. And speaking as a French correspondent yourself, what more can you tell us about the concerns raised by France?
Yeah, so Denmark and Greenland itself are part of, and the United States as well, are all part of NATO. So NATO is a military cooperation that has been raised up after the Second World War to try to get all the allies to make sure that the alliance around the Atlantic Ocean was staying strong and trying to avoid any military problem with other countries. So the United States are the backbone of NATO. They're part of the ones who made it at first and are still today making it possible. We've talked about it quite a lot here in the studio about the United States are the one funding it, or the ones sending the most troops, and all of that makes that there will be a lot of concern about any United States withdrawal, what it could mean for NATO, and could the European nations work alone or not. So for now, it seems like it would not be possible. But one of the key principles of the NATO chart is the Article 5, saying that an attack against one of the members is an attack against all. The problem is, because this article needs the unanimity, if one of the members attacks another, in this case would be the United States attacking Greenland and Denmark, then it would not work anymore, and it kind of make an existential crisis for NATO. Obviously, we're not there yet, but that's what most of the pundits are worried about. And there's also France, for example, itself has made a joint statement with other countries on the 6th of January. They've been saying that Arctic security should be taken care of collectively by the member states of NATO. So that includes Denmark, that includes the United States. France is also going to open a consulate in Greenland to show how much they care about Greenland independence and from the United States. That's something that the President, Emmanuel Macron himself, ordered. It's been talked about a few months ago, and then it's again yesterday was reactivated, kind of speeding up the process because of what President Donald Trump has been saying lately. It's also interesting to see, speaking about NATO, what President Donald Trump himself is saying, his point of view. So, as usual, we have to go on his social medias to see what he's talking about in his very signature style, like all capital letters, saying that Russia and China have zero fear of NATO without the United States. So that's what he's been saying. And then he also said, I doubt NATO would be there for us if we really needed them. And there is actually making a reference to two things. The first one being the fact that other countries also have to pay up and put more money into their own armies to try and be in NATO and get to the level of the United States. He's been talking about that quite a lot, and not only with NATO, I mean with South Korea as well. And the other thing is Article 5, as I was saying, is an attack against one, is an attack against all the others. But when you look closely, it's actually saying that if an attack occurs, each of the members will take individually and in concert with others the action that it deems necessary. And I think that's also where he wants to be, saying, how much would the European countries really be ready to help the United States in case of a need for the Article 5?
Right. And beyond the concerns raised in Europe, Professor Ban, some observers also point out that the Trump administration's pursuit of Greenland has, and I'm quoting, has China on edge. Please do explain this belief for us, and do you share it?
Well, we need to take a snapshot of what's going on in great power politics to figure that out. The United States and China engage in a proxy war to seize the initiative of great power politics or strategic competition in multiple domains like the South China Sea, the East China Sea, and the Taiwan Strait. Recently, the proxy war zone has been expanded to the Arctic Ocean. In particular, the United States, as a status quo power, wants to make the Arctic Ocean and Greenland under its control. In the meantime, China seeks a proactive policy on the Arctic Ocean. China defines itself as a near-Arctic state and dispatches its Coast Guard ships to the Arctic Ocean. However, ironically, the key objectives on how to check China regarding Greenland and the Arctic Ocean do not seem harmonized between Trump himself and cabinet members or the mega group. Trump is more interested in natural resources like critical minerals and rare earth elements, rather than countering China militarily. To the contrary, MEGA is eager to counter China with all scenarios, including military use. This different perspective continues to go on in other areas, such as the Taiwan Strait. In this sense, the United States' strategy on China remains ambiguous and indecisive.
Right. Moving forward, Chloe, Mr. Trump's desire for the Danish territory of Greenland follows his recent capture of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. The U.S. leader also says that U.S. oversight over Venezuela might last years. What's the latest on that front?
Yeah, so if we come back to the capture of Nicolas Maduro, it was actually the largest U.S. intervention in Latin America since the Panama invasion in 1989. So just a quick reminder, was more than a week ago, no, last weekend, the United States strike on Venezuela, what they called a large-scale strike. And they captured the Venezuelan president and his wife, and they are accusing them of participating in narco-terrorism. So they have captured them, brought them back to the United States so that they could stand trial. There's been pressure for months from the United States on Venezuela regarding the fight against drugs. So let's remember that the United States have been targeting boats on the coast of Venezuela, saying that they were carrying drugs. They've also been intercepting some oil tankers that were going or leaving Venezuela. So shortly after the capture of Nicolas Maduro, Donald Trump said that the United States, all companies, are going to be coming back to Venezuela to pump the oil. Even though he's been saying it himself now, it might take time because the oil sector in the country has been kind of let down, so it would need time and a lot of investment from the US to be able to get the sector back and up and running again. But I mean, it was one of the main, first things that he said in the coming hours after the strike from the US. He did an interview with the New York Times on Wednesday. That was kind of a very big and in-depth interview, and that's where he spoke about, when he was asked about the control of the country, on the country by the United States, he actually said that the direct oversight by US administration could last for years. He was asked, would it last for weeks, months, a year, and he said probably more than that, but only time will tell. So he's not obviously not giving any deadlines. It was kind of expected, but he also said that the country has already started to make money from the Venezuela because the United States are going to be taking oil that has been under sanction so that they can sell this crude oil. And he's been kind of speaking about that. Also was another important point from the New York Times article, is he made no commitments about when election could take place in Venezuela, because at the moment the vice president is taking the place of the president elected. So that would be the next question. And on this point, he said that he could not make commitment about it.
Right. Professor Ban, broadly speaking, how does such foreign policy by the Trump administration look to affect his calls for peace elsewhere?
Well, obviously, that is not a good sign or message for the world peace. Or such an aggressive policy could lead to the massive rise of revisionist attempts all over the place in the world. Moreover, unpreventable rise of revisionist attempts could bring the Arab world to international politics. Well, the new Cold War is inherently defined as the transitional order, which means any scenarios are possible due to growing uncertainty and instability. International rules are less observed in this transitional order, as shown by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Despite Russia's attempts to take away Ukraine's sovereignty by military power, a rules-based international order has not gone away entirely in international politics because the West and like-minded coalitions have punished aggressors like Russia and made tremendous efforts to preserve a rules-based order and a liberal international order. These efforts have served as a final safeguard to prevent a rules-based order from entirely breaking down in international politics. However, as the United States, who used to serve as a leader for preserving a rules-based order and a liberal international order, rushes to act like Russia through an aggressive foreign policy. The final safeguard is tearing apart. The collapse of the final safeguard motivates potential revisionists to adopt more aggressive and more hostile options, including the use of military force in their efforts to maximize their national interests, who pose grave threats to peace around the world.
Right, and on that grave note, I'm afraid we'll have to end today's discussion. Professor Ban, as always, thank you so much for your insights.
Thanks for having me.
Right, and Chloe here in the studio, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
Right, that ends Press Perspective today. Thank you for watching. We return same time tomorrow with a session on Seoul's second summit with Tokyo under the current administrations.